You know, The Hague has a deserved reputation of the legal capital of the world. But I believe that over recent days and recent weeks, The Hague has also been the chemical capital of the world. It has to do with the fact that here in The Hague is the headquarters of the Opcw. And over recent weeks, there have been continuous sessions by our Executive Council. There have been discussions, heated debates on a number of issues, including, among other things, the incident in Douma on the 7th of April 2018. A lot has been written about it in the press, and with this regard, together with our Syrian colleagues, we have organized this briefing at the Opcw headquarters in order to go back and once again relive these events of the 7th of April. Before starting the press conference, I would like to introduce to you the people who are sitting beside me at this table. To the right of me sits the head of Russian Chemical Defense Forces, General Igor Kirillov. To the left of me sits Deputy of the Permanent Representative of the Syrian Arab Republic at the Opcw, Dr. Hassan Abid. And next to him sits our hero, his son Giap. And next to him sits his father, Amar Giap. We have people from Syria who came from Douma, from Syria, who came here to The Hague to participate in this briefing, in this press conference. I'd like to start by making a statement that this event today, this briefing and the press conference, are held and the fact that they are held in no way harms the efforts or undermines the efforts of the experts, Opcw experts in Douma. They have already been there, they are working on schedule, they know what places they have to visit and to see. They are taking interviews, and we call on the Technical Secretariat of the Opcw and its experts to make use of their time in Syria in order to actually examine the underground chemical labs existing in Syria, which, as we believe, have been used to produce chemical substances, weaponized substances, used for all kinds of provocations. There is no place for delays here. Now is the time to deal with these underground laboratories, with these warehouses where they store it. We need to put an end to these kind of provocation activities. Now, as for what happened on the 7th of April in Douma, near Damascus, we believe it has been a provocation, and this is something we were certain of since the very start. Since the very start, it has been a provocation masked as a case of the use of chemical weapons. There is nothing surprising for us here. My good friend, Mr. Hassan Abid, is going to explain to you and talk to you in detail about the numerous diplomatic notes sent by the Syrians to the OPCW, to the UN Security Council, saying that there is a provocation being prepared, and there was a statement made by the President of the Russian Federation, Mr. Putin, during his conference on the 4th of April, as the result of the trilateral meeting between Russia, Iran and Turkey in Ankara. Now, why did we talk about this? Why did the Syrians talk about this? We wanted the people who are in control of the opposition forces in Syria to somehow prevent these people from executing their provocations, from making these steps. Unfortunately, we weren't able to prevent that. On the 7th of April, the press, the media started spreading this idea of this thesis of the use of chemical weapons, that chemical weapons have been used in Syria against the Syrian people by the government. From the very start, we knew that these are the dealings, these are the efforts of those who stand against the Syrian government. As always, the use of chemical weapons, the cases of the use of chemical weapons should be examined by experts from the OPCW, and the Director General of the Technical Secretariat is a very decent and fair man. He was very quick to respond to what we have said. We have visited the Secretariat and asked the Director General to send OPCW experts to examine what has happened in Douma. It would seem that common sense would dictate that we need to wait until there are experts on the ground, until they actually examine what had happened or hadn't happened, until they actually examine all these details. But the US and France, without waiting for the experts, claimed that they know everything beforehand. They know that Assad is to blame. They also tried to blame it on Russia and blame it on Assad, who they said was trying to use chemical weapons against his own people. The US and France believe that they are the guarantors of the international law, but in truth, they actually show disregard for the law. Otherwise, how could you explain their desire to basically destroy Assad? There was the press release on the 14th of April. OPCW experts were supposed to come, and just several hours before that there was a missile strike, because had it been done later, OPCW experts would themselves risk becoming victims of these US and French missile strikes. This goes against the basic norms of international law. This aggression against a sovereign state, against Syria, a member of the UN, member of the OPCW. This is a showcase of disrespect against the OPCW and personally against the Director General of the OPCW. It was under his leadership that these organizations received a Nobel Prize, and the UK, France and Britain couldn't care less about that. The primary argument they used to explain their desire to strike against Assad was this video spread through the media, shot and filmed by the pseudo-humanitarian organization calling themselves White Helmets. We have seen these scenes, these very touching, heart-rending scenes of people and children suffering of so-called chemical attacks. After that, France, UK and the US started spreading this information all throughout the media. They followed the same operation they used last year in Shanghai-Hun, as they used to, as always, they have shown these so-called victims, very young victims of chemical weapons. A year ago, it is reported that these photos of suffering children have terrified Donald Trump, and this is why he ordered missile strike against the Shayrat airfield. And now, this year, based on the materials and details we have, they were planning once again to show these photos, these printouts, this footage from the White Helmets footage. But they thought better. Maybe there was some inner voice of reason that told Nikki Haley not to do so again, not to provoke others. But this did not prevent the UK, the US and France to launch their airstrikes against the Syrian government. And today we can prove that the video filmed by the White Helmets is a staged video, a sloppily staged video, and that is why the attempts by our Western colleagues to quote this video and to use it as a pretense for strikes against Syria were completely groundless. This was the basis of our briefing today. This is why it received a lot of coverage in the media. There have been dozens of delegations from various countries, from observer states, from participants of the Opcw convention. There were a lot of questions, but unfortunately there hasn't been a representative of the US in the audience, among the audience. There haven't been any person from France or Belgium, from some of the EU countries, from some of the NATO countries and Asian allies of the US. They didn't have the nerve to come to this briefing. Perhaps truth is something they are scared of. They are scared to look into the eyes of young Hassan here. Well, you know, there's a saying in Russian that the cat knows what kind of meat she just ate. Once you've done some horrible things, then you hide, and now they are hiding. They're trying to show that it has nothing to do with them, but the people can see that it does. The people can see the truth. The truth will find a way out. The truth always seeps out. And it is very important to have it happen so that no more provocations happen in the future. Because our American partners are once again threatening use of weapons against sovereign states such as Syria. But we are not going to allow that. Now I would like to give the floor to my friend Hassan Abido, and after that we will start our presentation. Dr. Abido. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I am the deputy of the permanent representative of Syria at the Opcw, Dr. Hassan Abid. And I would like to say that I'm very happy and thankful to see you all here at this press conference today. I'm thankful to the Russian Federation and to the Russian mission in The Hague for their help in bringing the actual witnesses from Douma here to The Hague so that they would be able to relay their testimonies, tell them to the Opcw and to the member states of the Opcw. We are also very thankful to Mr. Shulgin personally for his efforts and to all of this Russian mission staff in The Hague. Now, the briefing we have listened to today was a very important one to actually provide the information to the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons Convention, to let them know the truth that our Western partners do not want to hear, the truth that comes from the people who were actually on the ground in Douma on the 7th of April. When we heard these statements that chemical weapons have been allegedly used by the Syrian army, the fact that these people are here today, the fact that this young child, Hassan, is with us here today, demonstrates the lies and the deceit and the hypocrisy of the countries that have participated in this aggression against Syria on the 14th of April. These countries want to put a stop, want to slow down the truth from actually reaching the people. Syria has on many occasions reiterated that it had never used any kinds of chemical weapons. Syria has destroyed its stockpile of chemical weapons by joining the Opcw in 2013. All of our chemical weapons stockpile was destroyed in cooperation with the Opcw. The chemical weapons were taken out of the country and disposed of, which was monitored by the specialists of this organization. Now, all these allegations against the Syrian army and the Syrian government are based on lies on statements full of lies made by Western representatives who want to destroy, to sully the reputation of the Syrian army that is resisting terrorist groups and is fighting and has been fighting terrorist groups for over 7 years. Their information is based on the reports that they claim they have received from open sources and from the terrorist groups that they themselves have been financing, the largest of them being White Helmets. White Helmets, I believe, and I claim, is a terrorist organization financed by the US and the UK. These two countries are the main sponsors of this organization. And the rumors about the use of chemical weapons appeared immediately on these fabricated videos, fabricated footage. Some of the people behind the White Helmets are responsible for orchestrating this. These people are criminals, they are killers, because they are killing children, innocent children. They are not providing necessary medical aid to these children. In the latest video, in the Douma video, you can see them pouring water on the people. This is a lie. These are all lies. In the case of Han Sheikhun, they were giving medicine, and they were actually using the medicine known as sarin gas, which made the pupils of the victims dilate. Now, they didn't specify what kind of chemical weapons they claim had been used. The Syrian mission in The Hague, since the start of this year and up to this day, has sent over 100 diplomatic notes to the technical secretariat of the Opcw, informing them beforehand that we have info saying that armed groups of terrorists are planning to organize an incident, to provoke an incident after which the Syrian army and the Syrian government would be blamed for use of so-called chemical weapons. We have provided this information in detail to the Secretariat, showing the placement, the locations of chemical warehouses. These chemical weapons have been brought into the country by terrorists. But every time these kinds of incidents happen, when we hear statements like this, we hear these allegations, we hear that the blame is always put on the Syrian army. And in the case of Han Sheikhun, they didn't even wait until the end of the investigation. They just launched their 59 Tomahawks against the Shayrat airfield. Now, as for the alleged incident in Douma, they preferred not to wait. They preferred not to even wait until the OPCW mission came to Syria, which the Syrian government itself has called for. And Syria and Russia has supported the call for this mission. Both countries have called for this mission to arrive. They said that they're ready to guarantee the security and the safety of OPCW experts.
وطلبنا الوصول العاجل والفوري لهذه البعثة إلى دوما للتأكد من أنه
We wanted the OPCW mission to come to Syria as soon as possible, so that
أي استخدام لأسلحة كيميائية.
There would be no more cases of chemical weapons use. But despite that, we have seen this trilateral aggression coming from UK, France and the US on the 14th of April. We've all seen this strike perpetrated against Syria, over 100 missiles launched against Syria. And when they launched these rockets, these missiles, they said that they are punishing Syria, but they didn't have any proof, didn't have anything to show for it. But our missile defense systems were able to destroy 71 of these missiles. They shot down 71 missiles out of more than 100. But some of these missiles actually were used against a scientific center in Jembraya, where pharmaceutical activities were taking place at the time that had nothing to do with chemical weapons. OPCW experts have visited this scientific center twice last year, and in their report they have written twice that this scientific center, this research center, had no kinds of chemical weapons prohibited by the Convention for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. Also, there are no activities carried out at this research center prohibited by the OPCW. Syria and Russia have worked together, have cooperated in everything pertaining to finding facts. And the Syrian-Russian cooperation was top-notch in all that pertains to guaranteeing safety and security of the experts. The OPCW mission has visited a number of sites in Douma, collected a number of materials, met a number of witnesses, a large number of witnesses, collected a lot of samples, and in their final report in the future you will see that there hadn't been any use of chemical weapons in this region. Moreover, as the Syrian army swept through the region after the terrorists have fled, after they fled Douma, the Syrian army found a large laboratory, a chemical weapons warehouse, where they found
مواد كيميائية
deadly
محظورة
chemical weapons
في الاتفاقية
and chemical weapons prohibited by the
بالإضافة
OPCW
إلى
Convention.
مواد متفجرة وعبوات فارغة
Also,
لملئها
there were all kinds of
لملئها بهذه المواد
other
الكيميائية
deadly
والمواد
materials,
ونذكر أيضا
all
أنه
kinds of
قبل
explosives.
شهرين
I
أو
would also like
ثلاثة
to
من
note
الآن
that
تم العثور
2 months ago,
في عدة مناطق
in
على
several regions and several sites,
43 برميل
43
كبير من مواد الكلورين في عدة مناطق
large
بارل أو سيلندر
containers of gas were found containing gas. We asked OPCW experts to come and examine these regions and to remove these containers, these chlorine gas containers. OPCW team came to these sites. They saw these containers buried in the ground, and the whole region, these regions were under the control of the groups, the armed groups. Now, in their final report, the OPCW experts stated that these chemicals, such as chlorine, were used for water purification, and in the regions where these containers had been found, there were no sources of water that needed to be purified, which goes to show that these armed groups that have been trying to use these chlorine containers to destroy the reputation of the Syrian army. Today, we were able, with the help of our Russian partners here in The Hague and with the help of the Russian government, and thanks to our cooperation between the citizens of our country, citizens of Syria who came to The Hague, we were able to show the truth of what happened in Syria, something that a lot of people observed, including OPCW experts. Every eyewitness of these events was able to describe what they saw during these events on the 7th of April. Now, all the statements, all the testimonies we've heard corroborate the fact that there are no indications that chemical weapons have indeed been used on the 7th of April in Douma. Moreover, our Western partners that attacked Syria decided not to come to this briefing because they don't want to listen to the truth. They don't want to hear the truth. They don't want to hear the testimonies of the people who were actually there on the 7th of April. They don't want to hear the testimonies of the child that is present here. They are afraid of the truth. Syria continues to cooperate
لإظهار كل الحقائق
with Russia. And in cooperation with the Russian government,
كي لا يكون
it
هناك أي
aims to present all of the facts
وبشكل
about this event, about this alleged chemical attack, so that there are no doubts left, and to prove that the Syrian army is not to blame and has nothing to do with any kinds of use of chemical weapons. Thank you. Thank you. Now we proceed to the main part of our press conference, and I'd like to give the floor to Major General Kirill Ivanov. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On the 7th of April, American non-governmental organization, with the support of the media, has spread information about the alleged use of chemical weapons by the Syrian government and the Syrian army in eastern Ghouta. The Syrian authorities have been blamed for the use of chemical weapons, and as the main proof, they provided statements published on social media, and the statements by the White Helmets. Without waiting for the Opcw experts' investigation, the UK, US and France performed a massive airstrike against Syria. Russian experts have performed a detailed analysis of the information on the ground, and we would like to present to you the results of our work. During our investigation, a number of houses were investigated, where, as was said, that there were gas containers allegedly delivered there by Syrian aircraft. For example, it shows that in the house where dead victims of the gas were found, there was a yellow gas container. Now, this apartment is partly destroyed by an explosion. Some parts of the roof are missing, parts of the walls are missing. Now, the container is not deformed, which is notable, because it had to be deformed since it fell from a large height. After looking at the second apartment, we can see proof that the allegations were fabricated. For example, ballistic investigation shows that the place where the container is placed and the hole in the roof goes against the possibility that it was delivered by air. Also, the container is almost undamaged, which is impossible if it fell from the height of over 2,000 meters, which is the height at which Syrian helicopters fly. Also, on the roof, you can see another container for water warming. We do not exclude the possibility that the roof has been destroyed artificially. Surprisingly, after this so-called airstrike of a 100-kilogram container, and it's coming into this apartment, into this room, a lot of the bed is almost intact, and small details, small pieces of furniture and other things in the room are completely unharmed. There are a lot of other things that go to show. For example, you can find, we were able to find gloves, and after asking the tenant of the house we were able to find that no one was present during the alleged attack in the house. And in fact, the tenant on one of the lower stories was actually breeding chickens there, and none of them were harmed during the so-called attack. During the Syrian army investigations, chemical weapons warehouses have been found controlled by the armed groups operating in Syria. Now, the materials found there can be used to create chemical weapons. A container with chlorine was found there, similar to those that was used by those who created this fake video. There were also materials that could be used to create sarin gas. It is quite likely that it was here in this laboratory that all these so-called facts or evidence showing that the Syrian army had created these chemical weapons. As for what happened in the hospital in Douma, Russia helped people who participated in these events come to The Hague, and now you'll be able to find out what actually happened here firsthand. But before that, I would like to note that Russia has done everything to maintain safety and security of all the sites investigated by the Opcw experts, and Russian war police and members of the Reconciliation Center have been providing security and safety of all present there. Now, let's proceed to discussing facts. We have patriots of Syria here with us, and I think it would be the right thing to do to give the floor to a small boy here, Hassan Diab. He's only 11 years old. You can see him on the white helmets footage. He's an alleged victim of the chemical attack. But first, we would like to ask his father, Amar Diab, to say a couple of words. And after that, if Hassan wants to say a few words, he will be given an opportunity to do so. Good evening. My name is Amar Hassan. I'm the father of this little boy you can see here. I'd like to speak about the truth of what happened. My children heard the screams that they needed to go to the hospital, so they went to the hospital. They saw fires in the streets. They saw smoke. So they came to the hospital through the tunnels near our house. In the hospital, some people took my children and brought them to the ambulance, and they started pouring water on them, cold water. Now, because of that, they have suffered, and my wife explained that these children were brought to this hospital without asking their parents. Later, we found out that this was a fake. We saw absolutely no evidence of chemical weapons. and all of my family members are feeling well. We were in the basement and we heard people shouting that we needed to go to the hospital. So when we were in the hospital, we went there through the tunnels. At the hospital, they started pouring water on me, cold water. Thank you. So let's continue our conversation. Now, the next participant of our talk today, Khalil Al-Jaish, Dr. Khalil Al-Jaish. He's an expert in resuscitation. Good evening. We came here to inform the world on what happened in Douma, because what happened goes against what was shown in the media and spread through the media. Because the video you have seen shows the hospital, the emergency rescue department, and I have been there. I have seen what happened, and what happened had been shown on this video. Because on the 7th of April, I have been in the hospital. About 7 p.m., we had people coming in suffering from asphyxiation. But the fact is, it was because of smoke. So they had difficulty breathing because of smoke intoxication. And the reason it happened was because nearby building has been bombed, and there was smoke and dust that came inside into the hospital, into the buildings. And in the shelter where people were hiding, people unfortunately inhaled all this dust and smoke, and this is why they had difficulty breathing. So the symptoms of asphyxiation were relatively mild, moderate, and we did everything that we were supposed to do. We gave them oxygen masks. We proceeded as we always do in such cases. We gave them hydrocortisone. Then a person came, one of the white helmets, and he started shouting that there was a chemical attack, that chemical weapons have been used. And after that, at the emergency care, we saw people creating this hysteria, this chaos in the hospital. They started dousing people with water. We didn't believe these people because we saw no symptoms of chemical attack, of chemical intoxication. So there were no evidence of chemical weapons use. All these things, all the people who had suffered from asphyxiation came home later that day. There were no deaths, no no people died during that day. And this is the only emergency care in all of Douma. Now we're waiting for the next commentary by Abdurrahman Hijazi, another resident of Douma. Good evening. My name is Abdurrahman Hijazi. I'm a resident of Douma. I'm a freelancer. I do not work at the hospital. I'm just an ordinary citizen. I came to the hospital that day because I had this small problem, and about 6 p.m. I saw people coming into the hospital claiming that they were from the civil protection. They started claiming that they had people with them that had suffered from chemical weapons. As a person who was actually inside there, I could see that these people were okay. I didn't feel any kinds of smells, or I didn't see any kinds of evidence for chemical weapons. But what they did, they create this atmosphere of chaos. They shouted, they screamed. But I can say for certain that nothing bad happened there. I didn't feel any chemical weapons. I didn't see any people beside me and any other people affected by chemical weapons. So several hours later, I came back home from the hospital. My house is about 1 kilometer away from the hospital, so I went on foot. I felt okay, and after I came home, I didn't feel any symptoms or anything that would indicate any chemical exposure. Now, as for this water dowsing performed by white helmets, what they did was they were just getting them clean because of all the dust and smoke after the explosions. So there were no evidence of chemical attack in Douma. Thank you. Next, we'll hear Saeed Das, who works at the lab in the hospital. Good evening. My name is Saeed Das. I work at the laboratory at Douma Hospital. I perform blood analysis and I collect blood from the patients. So this is a lab that works both for the hospital and the whole and for the emergency care. Now, it all started on Friday. There were a lot of people. There are a lot of people who suffered because of the bombings, the airstrikes. We worked at the hospital on Saturday as well, and at that day, on the 7th of April, I was at my lab. I was collecting blood, and I was transferring it to the emergency care. Now, I was in my lab when I heard that some people in the emergency care were screaming about chemical weapons. Now, after taking the remaining blood capsules with the blood from the donors, I ran to see what's happening. I came there to find that the floor has been completely doused with water. It was very chaotic. I could smell dust and smoke, but this was a result of an airstrike that happened some time before that in the streets. So the smoke just came into the hospital from the streets. I asked the doctors there what has been happening. Now, they said that it was nothing out of the ordinary, it's just people were scared. They said that this chaos started there because the people from the shelter upstairs started coming down into the hospital. Also, there were people there outside the hospital who wanted to get into the shelter. And so many of these people were also shouting about chemical weapons. So these people who were inside the hospital, they were dousing these alleged victims with water. And so we were there inside. We saw everything. We didn't put on any masks. We didn't hear any smell of chemical weapons. Because if this had been chemical weapons, we would suffer some of the effects. We would feel something, but we felt nothing. Thank you. So the next on the list is Muvafak Nasrim. He's a male nurse. Good evening. I am a paramedic officer at the Douma hospital. I was in the hospital on the 6th and 7th of April, and on the 8th of April as well. I was at the emergency care on Saturday, on the 7th of April. We were receiving people who suffered from the airstrikes. There were all kinds of there were people coming at about 7 p.m. with symptoms of smoke and dust intoxication with asphyxiation. So these were cases of asphyxiation. So these people came down from the shelter. So we did all we could to stabilize their situation. So as you could see on the video, there were people coming in screaming, shouting about chemical weapons, and as a result of their shouting, people started to feel fear. They were frightened. And so there was this atmosphere of chaos, of anarchy. And one person brought a small girl, a young girl, into the hospital. We checked her, we looked at her, but we found no evidence of chemical weapons. There were no chemical weapons used on her. We didn't find any symptoms or any evidence. I was in the hospital on the 8th of April, and there was nothing that could show that there had actually been a chemical incident. Now I'd like to give the floor to the person who did not participate in this fake video by white helmets. His name is Yasir Asel Mabjid. He was in a different place at the hospital, and he could see everything. Good evening. My name is Yasir Abdelmajid. I'm a surgeon at the hospital at Douma. On the 7th of April, on that day, I was in the hospital starting from 7:30 in the morning. I was at the surgical department. During the day, we had people coming in with all kinds of wounds that were due to the hostilities that had taken place during the day and the shelling. At about 7 or 7:15 p.m., there was a person who came to the surgical area with a girl who was just about 1.5 or 2 years old. It was said that she was brought there by an ambulance, and they needed to consult a surgeon. It was also said that this girl has suffered because of a chemical material, and when we saw her, her body temperature was lowered. She was wet with water, and her stomach was swelled. So I examined her, and from my point of view, from the point of view of a surgeon, she was healthy. But I was surprised that they said that she suffered a chemical attack. I examined her more broadly, and I was sure that there was nothing of that sort. I asked her if she really felt that there was some kind of a chemical used on her. After examining her, I couldn't find any evidence, any symptoms showing that she had suffered because of some chemicals. Her general health was good. There were no symptoms showing any chemical evidence, chemical weapons exposure. So I helped her to dry her clothes, and I gave her a blanket, covered her with a blanket, and once I saw that she was okay, that her general health was good, that she hadn't suffered any kinds of wounds, I gave her back to the ambulance. And for the rest of the day, for the rest of my shift, I stayed in the hospital performing surgeries to the people coming into the hospital. But as I've said, this girl, it was said that she suffered a chemicals attack. And after my examination, I didn't see any evidence, anything that would indicate that she has been exposed to a chemical weapon. Thank you. So we still have some people who would like to talk. Now I'd like to give the floor to Ahmad Khashoy, who has been working at the hospital, at the emergency care. His name is Ahmad Khashoy. You have the floor. Ahmad Khashoy has just left the audience for a couple of minutes. Now I'd like to give the floor to Muntaz Al-Hamash, who's a paramedic.
Greetings to everyone. My name is Muntaz Hanash. I am with the surgical department. On the day of the incident, I was working on my blog. I would like to draw your attention to a few important issues. The first thing is that working as a medic in that hospital was a challenge because we were short on staff. And for those few days from the 6th to 8th of April, a humanitarian corridor was open, and a large number of doctors, medics went through it. So they chose to left, and we were short on staff. We worked round the clock for 3 days in a row. And working like that, as well as the high numbers of people who turned in for help, led to the fact that we could not give people the high-quality service we wanted to. We had help from people who did not have proper medical training or experience. And many of them are on the video. You can see them working haphazardly, not the way professionals should work, medical professionals. And when there was that person who claimed that chemical weapons had been used, causing panic in the emergency department, that's what happened. And people reacted to that. They started to apply medical measures the way they thought was okay, without consulting the proper medics. Although our hospital does have a special department for such cases, and there were some people in the emergencies room too at the time. We were operating on them. I like to say that some people came into this surgical room. They went in from the next building. They had some difficulties breathing. They were coughing a lot. But after the medical exam, we did not see any symptoms that would indicate of them suffering from a chemical weapons attack. That was caused by inhaling much dust. Thank you very much. Thank you. I give the floor to Ahmad Al-Saur, paramedic from the emergency department of the Syrian Red Half Moon. Good evening. My name is Ahmad Saur. I am with the Red Crescent in Syria. Our emergency department was taking in emergency patients. That's what we do. We provide the first medical aid. The Red Cross is not working temporarily, and from 6th through 8th of April, it was the same. That was due to the ongoing military operation. I was working at the time, and our department was checking in patients. On those days, from 6th to 8th of April, we did not register any cases of chemical poisoning. All the people who checked in at the time, they either checked in for medical help, getting drugs, or with the injuries, such as injuries from by debris. And none of those patients showed any signs of chemical poisoning. Thank you. Thank you very much. I can see that Mr. Ahmad Kashoy, administrator with the emergency department, is back with us. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Ahmad Kashoy. I'm responsible for the logical operations in the hospital of Douma. I'd like to tell you what happened on the 7th of April in the hospital of Douma. At that time, I have been living at the hospital for about half a month. At 7 p.m., I was near the entrance to the hospital. I saw a person come in with a child. He started screaming about chemical weapons. Throughout the day, we have been seeing people coming in, checking in with all kinds of wounds because of the shelling, because of the airstrikes. Now, this person came in, started shouting, created chaos. In the emergency care, there were a lot of people who were frightened. They were panicked. And frankly speaking, there were people who had problems breathing, but we have seen people like that coming in throughout the day. And we saw that this shouting about chemical weapons was used to instigate panic. The hospital in Douma is a very large building. It's enforced, and at the lower floors, there are many families who live there, using it as a shelter. These people fled they fled the hostilities taking place in the city. And once they heard screams about chemical weapons, they were even more frightened. This panic spread, and there were about 1,000 or maybe 1,500 people there at the time. There were people unknown to us that were filming the emergency care. They were filming the chaos taking place inside. And they were filming people being doused with water. The instruments they used to douse them with water were originally used to clean the floors, actually. All this has been happening for about an hour. After that, we provided care to these people and sent them home. There were no mortalities, no one has died. All the people who came, among them there were no people suffering from any chemical exposure. Thank you. And our final guest from Syria today is Dr. Hassan Oyun. He's a medical doctor.
Good evening. Thank you for your hospitality. My name is Hassan Ayoun. I am a doctor with the emergency department. I was on duty on 6th through 8th of April. And I've been working with the emergency department since 2013. I started my career in Damascus. And what Dr. Montaz already said, is that a lot of medical professionals left our hospital during those days because of the humanitarian operation. So we were forced to work in challenging conditions because we had to use help of unprofessionals, people who were not properly trained. For many years, people in Douma have been using car tires used or to cut and to burn them for fires. So I was working on 6th or 8th of April. My duty was, I was to be relieved from my duty on the 8th, but there was no replacement, so I continued working. Then we began to getting in patients checking in, the injured and the wounded from the military action. And that continued like that for the next day. We had from 15 to 20 people with some difficulties breathing. We gave them a check, and we did not see any indications, any obvious indications of any kind of weapons. Their pupils were normal. There were no signs or indications in their bodies, in their ribs. So they were all suffering light or medium inconveniences. We gave them all the help we could, and they left the hospital in a few hours. We did not leave any of those patients for further, we did not check them in to stay with the hospital for further care. There were no complications with any patients on that day. That's what I wanted to say, and thank you very much. That's what I would like to add to the whole discussions. So, thus, today, the states participants to the Convention Prohibiting Chemical Weapons and the active member of the Council of the organization, the observer state. And now, as we speak to the international community through this press conference, we are delivering evidence and testimonies indicating that what happened on Douma, in Douma Hospital on 7th of April was a provocation by the white helmets. So all those people feeding off the taxpayers, especially in the first place, the United States and Great Britain. Unlike our Western partners, American partners, as well as the British partners, who are used to throw around words and to throw around baseless accusations based on some absurd logic, and using social networks and non-existing people as sources. You, as the state members of the Organization for Prohibiting Chemical Weapons, you saw real people, medics, doctors, professionals, as well as a patient who were on that film, on that video, and they told you the real story of what really happened back then. Yes, today we caught the slanderers read in action. Caught them by their hand, all those who were trying to make the international community think otherwise. But we're not happy about that, or it brings us no joy that they did it, because it's too serious a situation. We are very much concerned with what is going on in the world. Look, Russia is being accused of spreading fake news all the time. We are accused of waging the so-called informational war. But I believe that after today's briefing and this press conference, no one will have any more doubt left as to who is really spreading fake news and who is waging an informational war made up by the assistance of the US, the White Helmets. This fake news video has caused far-reaching consequences. Probably for the very first time since the Caribbean crisis back in 1962, the world has reached that line that it should not cross, where we all face the threat of a direct military confrontation between Russia and the US. It seems that the threat is not that acute now. The situation is settling down. But unfortunately, we see no reason to be resting. There are still some threats to use force against such a sovereign state as Syria, which means that the threat of a military conflict, a powerful military conflict, is still there. It's still real. There are some not very good omens around of some big thunderstorm. It's terrible. It's fake news. It's provocation. This provocation that happened in Douma on the 7th of April makes us remember the so-called Glavitz provocation in 1939. The Nazis imitated Poland's attack on a radio station on the German territory. The SS units ran an operation that made it look like Poland attacked that radio station, and the SS unit left around bodies of people wearing the Polish military uniforms, but these people in reality were the prisoners who were dressed like that for that purpose. That gave Germany a pretext to unleash the Second World War.
So, what we want to say now is you should turn away from this harmful path. Stop rushing towards confrontation. We cannot allow Cold War, a new edition of Cold War we see today, turn into a hot war. We need to teach and learn our lessons. We need to turn against confrontation and continue to work together based on mutual interest and mutual respect. We sincerely believe that Syria will see peace, and the long-suffering Syrian people will be finally able to reap the fruits of peace. Now, as for Russia, Russia is doing everything in its hands to help the political, peaceful process in Syria. The successful Syrian National Dialogue Congress is a testament to the fact that we are doing everything to help this political dialogue in Syria, which consequently should result in restoring peace to this land. I'd like to hope that many years after today, young Hassan we see here today will grow up, become a decent and good citizen of his country, of Syria, that he will choose a profession, he will become a medical doctor, a scientist, a teacher, maybe even a diplomat, a Syrian diplomat who would represent his country in the international arena. Everything should be done to normalize the situation, to promote a peaceful resolution to the Syrian conflict, and to reduce tensions in the world. The future of the world rests on that. The future of us, ourselves, our kids, and our grandchildren rests on that. And now we are ready to answer your questions.
Rupert Evelyn from ITV News. A question first for our Syrian visitors. How threatened do you have to feel to change your story and to deny a chemical weapons attack? And a question for you, Ambassador. How low do you have to go to bring a little child all the way here and threaten them?
So, Doctor will respond to the first part of this question. Frankly speaking, you have a very strong question. But the reason we came here was not because we were pressured to do so. Instead, we came here fully free and independent of the Red Crescent. We came here on our own behalf. No one pressured us to do so. We are speaking words of truth. We are speaking them freely. So what happened to us? Nobody told us what to say, what not to say. We came here because we want to tell about what actually happened, what happened to us. Thank you. On my part, I would like to add that one important thing. There was a session of the Executive Council called by Western states, well, not formally by them, but under their pressure, to discuss this case of the alleged use of chemical weapons in Syria. We have discussed on this quite a lot for quite a long time. We have heard the speeches of representatives of your country, of the US, of the UK. They provided their own point of view. We presented our arguments. But it seems to me that our colleagues from the West simply didn't want to hear us. And after the speech by the representative of the US, we saw people from the EU reaching to the microphone, as well as some of the Asian allies, Asian US allies, and all of them started repeating the same words as if reading the same piece of paper. It seems like they prepared a single document for them to read, and all of them went on to say that to allow this American action as something legitimate, as proportionate, as useful, and any arguments we presented that this goes against international law, that it goes against common sense, all of our arguments were hypocritically denied. Even the basic argument that the OPCW has joined these efforts, that we have seen a team by Ahmed Sunjui sent there. How can you say that you have this irrefutable proof? They show us, here you go, you have this social media, this footage by the white helmets, you can see these dying children. We tell them this is not true. We know that this is not true. And they refuse to even listen to us. They refuse to talk to us. They go so far as to say that what we are saying is fake, it's disinformation. But we respond by saying, well, since you don't understand normal human conversation, okay, let's do it some other way. If you don't want to listen to reason, okay, let us bring you the witnesses, the actual live witnesses of what happened. Ask your British colleagues who were there at the session. They will confirm that. They will confirm that. Yes, it was difficult for a young Hassan to come here. It was a difficult flight, but this young hero is a witness, is a very important witness of what happened. He's an innocent child. And as they say in Russia, it is the child who says the truth. And it was today that young Hassan told you the truth. Something you don't want to hear, not you specifically, but our Western counterparts, our Western colleagues. This is something, they forced our hand to do that. We just had no other way but to show it that this footage, these social media statements were all lies, because our colleagues declined our very basic proposals, for example, to support the General Director's mission, OPCW mission into Syria. They didn't even want to support the OPCW mission. They rejected that. They don't want to recognize that the situation is grave, that there are actual threats. There is the threat of military confrontation. I talked about the Gleiwitz incident just moments ago to emphasize that the world is now at a very dangerous crossroads. If, God forbid, there is any kind of nuclear confrontation, do you know what would happen? They say that Russia is warmongering, that Russia is saber-rattling, but how can you say that? Russia is the country that knows the true cost of war. Everyone in Russia says that, God forbid, there is another war. We lost 27 million people during the Second World War, and all we care for is peace. And we want our Western colleagues to understand that. We want the Syrian people, we want young Hassan to be able to go to school in peacetime. This is what we want to do, but there are countries who oppose that, seemingly. And this is something that makes us very sad, and we hope that common sense will finally prevail.
Hi, Stephanie Vandenberg from Reuters News Agency. The doctor who just spoke on behalf of the Syrian eyewitnesses, could he first please repeat his name and maybe tell me what is going to happen with the eyewitnesses now? What do you expect? Will you go home? Will you stay here? Will you testify more? What's going to happen next for you? Thank you.
الأمور الإدارية. أنا اسمي أحمد قشوع. مسؤول عن الأمور الإدارية.
Hashur. My name is Ahmad Hashur, and I'm in charge of logistics with the hospital. I'm not a doctor.
The question is, what will happen now to these eyewitnesses who came here? He said, we came by the Red Crescent, we came of our own free will. My question is, they were brought now to Europe to testify. Will they stay here? Are they going back to Syria? Are they going back to work in Douma? What's going to happen to them?
رح نرجع على بيوتنا.
We're going home. My name is Hassan Ayut. I'm going back to Douma, and we're going to keep living our regular lives. And we're going home, and I see no problem with that. The situation is better now, and we are Douma residents like many others. Are you happy with the answer?
Ima Bakar from NOS. I'm going to ask the question in Arabic. They can translate it, that will be easier. السؤال الأول لسيد والد الطفل حسن. ذكر هو في منتصف النفق تم إيقافه من قبل سيارة بيضاء.
The child said that he was across from the white car, the white vehicle. Who did that vehicle belong to? Which organization?
It's Hassan's father. Okay. Because he said, okay, قال سيارة بيضاء. بعدين ابنه حسن أثناء كلامه قال تم إيقافنا من قبل.
He mentioned the white vehicle, a white car, and he said that they were standing across the white car, white vehicle that belonged to the Red Crescent. But Mr. Saur said that the Red Crescent did not work on the 6th or 8th of April. That's why I wanted to ask which organization was that vehicle with?
فمنظومة الإسعاف اللي بيستخدمها الخوذ البيضاء بكل المناطق عليها شعار هلال أحمر، فيبدو هذا اللبس الموجود عند الطفل. سيارات الهلال الأحمر ما كانت تتواجد في هذيك المناطق، وحتى بهذا التاريخ هي معطلة، والمنظمة نزلت بيان رسمي بهذا التاريخ. أنا هيك بتوقع إنه أنا سمعت مثل ما أنت سمعت. فينا نسأل حتى ولد الطفل إذا موجود بعده موجود هون. صحيح لذلك يفضل نسأله. موجود هو معنا، موجود بالقاعة لكن هو خارجا.
Shulgin. Anna Holligan, BBC News. I just wanted to know why you thought it was more important to put these possibly valuable and vulnerable witnesses in front of the media before allowing the OPCW investigators to speak to them, as the OPCW had requested.
Just like I already said, Russia, after what happened in Douma on 7th of April, Russia turned to the technical secretariat requesting for immediate dispatch of the OPCW team for investigating the incident. We did everything to speed up that. We also cooperated on the security issues. It's not easy on the ground. The Russian military police deployed on the ground also takes active part in facilitating that. And the OPCW inspectors are already working on the ground. They have their schedule. They work on those facilities. And I would like to point out specifically for the press present here, for the reporters, please make it part of your reports that there were some statements that some underground lab was discovered in Douma with some chemicals, with some prohibited chemicals from the addendum to the OPCW convention. This needs to be investigated, and some container was found the same as in Ghouta. And the OPCW inspectors are exactly the people who need to look into these facts or into these possible facts. They need to take care of that. That's what we would like to call for. And I'm taking this opportunity now. Also, some very important witnesses are being recovered. The OPCW misses some important witnesses, some people are saying, but I would like to disagree with that. I would like to say that some Western companies, I will not name them specifically, but they are trying to spread this information. Like yesterday, there was a report questioning why is it Russia with the Syrians organizing this briefing that we're having today, that they should not have been doing that, that we should have brought these witnesses to the OPCW first instead. But I would like to respond to these allegations that 6 people, please make it part of your reports, that 6 people were questioned by the OPCW experts, and many more others were ready to be questioned by the OPCW experts, but the experts decided they needed only 6. They picked 6, they talked to them, and they said they were completely satisfied with the testimonies. And so these people were set free from their duty to speak to the OPCW. OPCW was no longer interested in them. That's why they went on with us here for this briefing, for an important thing to do.
Ambassador, you mentioned in the Russian press release that somebody here was going to be present who was a witness of producing the video of the white helmets, and I was wondering where this witness is and if he can tell his testimony.
Well, listen, all of the statements you've heard today are a very good testament to the fact that the white helmets have filmed their fake video. Maybe I have missed something. but some of our Syrian representatives have mentioned these people running in, these white helmets coming in, shouting about chemical attacks, dousing people in water. Isn't this evidence enough that it was the white helmets responsible for it? I don't know about that. I believe that we provide ample information indicating that this was a provocation by the white helmets. You have seen little Hassan. You have heard about this medical used on him. Well, you can either believe us or not believe us. You can see living people today who said that they were brought into the hospital. They were told very convincingly that there were these chemical weapons used. One of the representatives of Syria will now give his response.
الاشخاص اللي صوروا هن اشخاص مجهولين، الخوذ البيضاء هن كانوا مسيطرين على الواقع يعني وعلى ارض الواقع. 90% هن الخوذ البيضاء هن اللي فبركوا هالقصه كلها. انا شفت 3 اشخاص ماسكين موبايلات، كل واحد واقف بزاويه عم بيصور.
I saw 3 people who were handing one another phones, and it was them who were filming what was happening. He is a terrorist. How could he come here?
Do every single one of you not trust the white helmets? The rest of the world, or much of the rest of the world, sees them as conducting legitimate operations. Can I ask you all, do you not trust the white helmets? And Ambassador, if I may ask you, what do you say to those, including the UK today, who say that this exercise is merely a stunt? And I wondered if I could ask you to answer a question in English, because I know your English is very good indeed.
Thank you, Ambassador. Let me just clarify this issue. The White Helmet is a terrorist organization working in Syria, financed by US and UK, and they are in Syria to implement the agenda of the United States of America and the United Kingdom, and they are not in helping or in offering any medical help or any medical emergency like you think they were doing. In contrary, and they have there is a wide testimony by doctors from inside Syria and from outside Syria, from abroad of Syria, and there is a medical organization of medical doctor of Sweden who testify that all the treatment done by White Helmet in the incident of Khan Sheikhoun was contrary to the normal procedure and against the treatment, the normal treatment, and they were killing the kids and the children, and they are not helping them because the kids were not facing any sarin or any chemical weapon. and they try to inject in them and inject in their heart that injection. So you can return to the publication of that testimony, and other doctors also said that. Thank you. Absolutely. Yes. I think you heard them one by one, and you can hear them again. We can give them the floor to testify if they trust White Helmet or if they consider White Helmet as terrorist organization.
I would like to give the floor to Major General Kirillov, Igor Kirillov. And after that, I'll say a couple of words to you regarding whether I believe white helmets or not. And you will understand why we can never trust them. I'd like to say a couple of words why there is little trust to the white helmets. Remember the photos taken in Han-Shi-Hun? When white helmets were taking these photos near the place where sarin gas has allegedly been used, without any kind of protection, any protection gear. I'm an expert on that. I know that considering the concentration of this chemical purported to be there, none of them would be able to stay alive. Now, the footage we've seen presented by them with the same people featuring in different sites and different videos, we know that the person responsible for creating the white helmets is the UK intelligence officer. We can say that they have been very incompetent. Now I'll say a couple of words about the white helmets. Can you hear me? Could you speak in English? Well, we have Russian-speaking people here as well. Well, you see, speaking about Han-Shi-Hun, doctor has explained everything. We have known right from the start that it has been a provocation. We have started asking questions since the very start. So last year there was a special briefing and your two citizens of the UK organized it, and I started asking them questions. No less than 10 photos of young children with their faces full of fear, with their eyes dilated. And any specialist, any chemical specialist can clearly see what's happening, because when exposed to sarin gas, your eyes are not dilated, it goes the other way around. So how can you explain that? But these photos were presented by the white helmets, and so these two specialists couldn't say anything in any way comment on that. So a good friend of mine, seeing them, threw them a bone. You know, he said, "You gentlemen might have forgotten that these white helmets rescuers were putting atropine fluid into the eyes of children, and at that time these British experts said that it wasn't atropine." Okay, I said, then why in their report it says nothing about that? On page 36 it said there were these and that symptoms of chemical exposure, such as diarrhea and headaches, but there wasn't. But it didn't say anything about dilated eyes. So we asked them, explain to us, why did they have dilated eyes? Nikki Haley has presented us with these photos, but none of them were able to explain that. And then Phillips and Ollis, these two people from the UK, said that they did not take these photos as evidence. So, look, listen, you are saying now that you don't believe that these photos are evidence. You have shown these photos to President Trump, and he based his decision of attacking Syria based on these photographs. And later, when we wanted to show our representatives from the foreign ministry wanted to show these photos, the photo of the shot by white helmets on the screen, the very same photos. You know how they reacted? They started this hysteria. Representative of the US started shouting about a protocol violation and so on and so forth. He said he will never allow these photos to be shown. So why am I telling you this? Today we have exposed this provocation in Douma. And I am sure, and I am absolutely sure, that a time will come when we will expose this provocation that happened in Khan Sheikhoun. And just like we found this little boy, we will find another little boy who will tell us what exactly happened, what exactly had happened there. I hope that our partners still have some shame, which we would be able to appeal to. We're not doing this because we want to win in any way or to show that we are somehow dominating over our partners. No, we want to normalize the situation. We don't want our partners to act with presenting fakes and things like that. Thank you. Also, I'm being told that the Syrian delegation is supposed to be packing things right now because they are going back home today. So now we have time for the final question, and this will be it.
Just a question surrounding young Hassan. Given his age, and he is very young, how did you come to the conclusion that he would be able to face an international media, to be able to face a journey and recount a trauma? And secondly, are all of the Syrians present here, will they be returning to Syria immediately after this?
First of all, Hassan is with his family. He is with his father and mother, and he is quite comfortable. But you're asking about how this trip has been a stress. Well, did you ever consider how much stress he went through when some unknown strangers in the hospital began pouring water on him, shouting and making him uncomfortable and stressed? You saw him on the video. They opened his mouth by force and forcing some stuff, some medical probably stuff into it. Did you think that was a stress? He could have been traumatized. Why are you raising the question of trauma to us, not to the white helmets who put this poor boy through that much suffering? What about those children who survived the Khan Sheikhoun attack? So these Syrian people who came here today are patriots of their country. They came here to expose the lies and tell the truth to the international community.
Thank you, Ambassador. Before closing this conference, I wish to thank all present here, and I wish to thank especially Russian Federation and the mission of the Russian Federation in The Hague for organizing all this event and for the briefing and for bringing all our Syrian patriots here to deliver their testimony, their genuine testimony, and they are completely free to deliver in their way all what they face and what they saw and what they lived in that day of the presumed alleged fabricated attack in Douma on the 7th. And we assure you that Syria wanted all the truth, nothing but the truth, and we want to make that truth known to everybody, whether some countries like or doesn't like. This is not our matter. This is not our importance. We have to show the truth to the international community that Syria is innocent, and the Syrian army is innocent and is combating the terrorism in Syria and will continue combating terrorism until liberating all Syria from it and until restoring the peace in all Syria. Syria wants the peace and wants to cooperate with the OPCW, and the OPCW team is working, continue to work, and they have met with the witnesses here, and we are not duplicating any work. We are doing our way to help the international community, the international media, to know the truth. If you are not able to go to Syria, we brought Syria for you here, and we thank Russian Federation for that. And for the other allegation and accusation, wait and you will see more, and you will be surprised, because when the team of the OPCW will visit the storage where chemicals has been found left over by terrorist groups in Douma, we found chemicals from Germany, we found chemicals from UK, and from Portendown laboratory from Salisbury, not from anywhere else, from Salisbury. And you know Salisbury, how was important these days. So all the accusation on all the false allegation are to be completely unveiled. And we thank all the journalists who wants to report on the truth and on what they heard today. Thank you.
Thank you. As we hear these optimistic words, and certain that this briefing and this press conference will help us achieve peace, achieve a peaceful resolution of the Syrian crisis, will help promote the political process also promoted by Russia during the Astana process, and with this hope for future success, for peace, I would like to ask you to tell your newspapers and channels about this briefing. I'm certain that we will meet again, and as we've heard from our doctor, there are more surprises awaiting you. Thank you.